speakers. We have Caporal Melissa Wutke from the RCMP E Division and Monsieur Charles Gakuba, du Service de contrôle routier Québec.
From Service du contrôle routier Québec.
In charge of mandatory operational and non-operational training for all provincial traffic RCMP members in British Columbia. She's been a member of the RCMP for over 10 years, serving in both Alberta and British Columbia, and the last 6 years specifically in traffic enforcement. She has worked operationally to enforce traffic laws on the streets as well as administratively as a media representative for the RCMP discussing traffic-related initiatives and addressing serious vehicle incidents across the province. Mr. Gakuba is
director of the West Montreal Laval Police Service, Road Safety Police Service. He joined this division in 2000 as safety inspector. I was named investigator before becoming manager. Before working in the public service, Mr. Gakuba taught in primary school, secondary school, and he holds a master's degree from the University of Montreal. So we will begin with
Wutke for her presentation.
Is there a slide advancer?
Yes, you have it. Here, go forward and backward.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. This is the first time I've been asked to speak at an event such as this, so bear with me if I stutter or have some pauses. That's probably just my nerves speaking. Again, my name is Melissa Wutke. I am a corporal with the BCRCMP traffic section. As was mentioned, I have almost 11 years operational policing service. The last 6 years have been specifically in a traffic unit. And it's only been the last 2 years that I've served on the administration. I am in charge of the training for approximately 400 provincial police officers. Those police officers are the traffic police of all of the provincial highways in British Columbia. I'm here today to speak about the enforcement of distracted driving, what we're seeing in BC specifically, what we're doing to combat distracted drivers, and some of the challenges we are facing, as well as how we're trying to get the message out to the public. So the two pictures here on my first slide are just some exaggerated examples of something typical of what we're seeing on the road, as well as the potential consequences. When someone's looking down at their lap, looking at a cell phone, possibly smoking a cigarette at the same time, these are activities that take their attention completely off driving. If this driver perhaps was sitting at an intersection doing these things, the light turns green, perhaps the person behind them honks, their first immediate reaction may be to just hit the gas and go on through that intersection. As we can see, if this driver did that, they could possibly be hitting a pedestrian, a cyclist, or anybody else that may be in that intersection. So using an electronic device while operating a motor vehicle. When I speak of distracted driving, I'm referring to any activity that impacts the driver's ability to be focused on the road, in addition to cell phone usage. Now, while cell phone and electronic device usage is one of the most common distractions that we see, it's far from the only distraction that I've personally seen on the road. And as we know, dangerous driving claims approximately 78 lives a year on BC roads. This number is concerning, and as police, we are trying to make the motoring public realize that distracted driving is a problem, and it's one that we all need to work together to put our phones away and avoid any distracting behavior when we're behind the wheel. So the police in BC do not have a specific ticket for distracted driving. However, we do have the use of an electronic device while operating a motor vehicle, as well as we also have tickets for driving without due care, driving without consideration, and also we have used drive while view or control is obstructed. In dealing first with the use of cell phones behind the wheel, in British Columbia, under the Motor Vehicle Act, Section 214.2, Sub 1, the fine for using an electronic device behind the wheel is $368, and it includes 4 penalty points. Prior to this increase, which just happened in June of 2016, the fine was only $167, and there were no further penalty points associated. What we're also asking is that phones be securely fastened in the motor vehicle. By that we mean in a holder. That holder can be on the dash. They can also be attached to the person, in a pocket, in a purse, away. What we're trying to get away from is people in the habit of driving with their cell phone on their lap, or in the cup holder, or somewhere else loose in the vehicle. In 2013, the BC Provincial Court made a ruling that simply holding a cell phone constituted its use. Now, as of June 2016, for example, if a regularly licensed driver has two or more tickets for cell phone usage within a 1-year period, they can now be classified as a high-risk driver. With that, they may be assessed by the Driver Improvement Program, and that assessment may come with driving prohibitions that can range from 3 to 12 months as the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles sees fit. As a high-risk driver, these people are now being included in the DRP, which is our Driver Risk Premium Program. Now, as of March 1st, ICBC, which is British Columbia's provincial insurance program, introduced a Driver Risk Premium Program. This includes those convicted of using an electronic device, as they are now considered high-risk drivers. If these folks get 2 or more convictions within a 3-year period, they can be paying as much as $2,000 in additional penalties. That penalty is about $740 of an increase of what it was before as of the June date. But even with these penalties, we've not seen a significant reduction in the tickets written or the harm on our roadways. So, in addition to cell phone use, some of the other common distractors that we're seeing: eating in the vehicle. Now, as I said before, there's no ticket for distracted driving, or even eating for that respect. Driving without due care or driving without consideration, these are also fines under the Motor Vehicle Act, and they carry a price tag of $368 for the due care with 6 points, or $196 for the driving without consideration. Also 6 points. People, when they're eating behind the wheel, if they're eating something that requires both hands, they're a distraction. This picture is an exaggeration. Obviously here we see a woman, she's behind the wheel, she's holding something that's got chopsticks in it. Obviously in order to eat that, she would have to hold it with one hand, eat it, use the chopsticks with the other. This is one of the examples I used on social media to show that this kind of distracted driving will net you a ticket. Of course, this tweet sparked a bunch of debates, mostly by our keyboard warriors out there, that, well, I can't eat, I can't drink, what, I'm drinking my coffee behind the wheel, what's wrong with that? I've had numerous conversations about the question of coffee or water bottles or things of the like. The basic rule of thumb with our police officers is they are employing common sense. They're asking themselves, before they write the ticket, does this activity take your eyes off the road? And does this activity take your hands off the wheel? Most of the people I know are very perfectly capable of sipping a coffee or another beverage, and that does not distract them from driving. However, as illustrated here, if that activity causes you to have both hands off the wheel, you're steering with your knee, there's obviously a distraction here. In this case, the police would probably consider it a due care ticket or consideration, and that would be based on the other circumstances, road conditions, and driving. Another example, not paying attention to your surroundings or reading anything, including books behind the wheel. As with the last slide, the ticket for this would probably be driving without due care or consideration, depending on the other factors of the roadway. Is this person reading a book, driving down the highway in the pouring rain? Is this bumper-to-bumper traffic, or is this a wide-open road? Is this person speeding or cutting in and out of lanes or doing some other erratic driving as well? The ticket's still the same as a cell phone ticket in the price of $368, but the penalty points on this ticket is 6 points instead of 4. Of course, any conviction for driving without due care or consideration could also have the driver being classified as a high risk, and then they would be subject to the further fines, especially if that conviction occurred within a 3-year period, if more than one in the 3-year period. This example is again an exaggerated version of somebody behind the wheel doing something other than driving. You might be surprised to hear that people have a common misconception that as long as they're not reading something on their electronic device, then they're not distracted and it's okay. We see people reading books, novels, map books. This particular activity, I've seen the newspaper many times. It's very popular with people commuting to work in rush hour traffic in the morning. Another example, pretty much doing any other task when you're behind the wheel. This slide shows somebody making their grocery list because, of course, you're sitting in traffic, you're stopped at a light. People like to multitask. We've got other things to do. In addition to note writing or things of the like, we're also seeing shaving, people putting on makeup, brushing their hair, brushing their teeth. I've even had somebody driving down the highway with their hands through the steering wheel, with their cell phone. So they're, in essence, driving with their wrists while they're playing, I don't know, Pokemon or some other video game. People just aren't thinking. In fact, recently in Vancouver, we had they posted it on the Vancouver Police Twitter page. They had somebody who had actually secured their iPad to the airbag section of the steering wheel so that they could monitor their social media feeds and do whatever else while they were driving down the road. So now on to one of the other lesser known distractions, pets. I'm sure we've all seen this. You're driving down the road and you see that car next to you with the small dog or small cat. This is driving while your control or your view is obstructed, and it's also a fine under the Motor Vehicle Act. The fine is only $109, but it does carry the 3 penalty points. Pets are an extreme distraction behind the wheel, especially when they're loose in the cab of a vehicle. It's dangerous to the driver, and it's dangerous for the pet. As you know, animals should always be secured in a motor vehicle, be it in a crate, seatbelt through their leash, something like that. However, as shown in this picture, if the animal is actually restricting your ability to maneuver the vehicle, or if it's impeding your ability to react to an unexpected situation on the road, this is a form of distracted driving. I've personally pulled over somebody that was traveling down the highway, so in excess of 100 kilometers an hour, in the HOV lane with a small dog similar to this one on their lap with the dog's paws up on the steering wheel. Obviously not very safe. The driver did not seem to have any idea why I pulled them over that day. I've also seen where I've pulled over somebody because they had their cat lying in between the windshield along the heat vent in the vehicle. So this person again was driving down the highway speeds, craning their neck so that they could see the road as they looked over their cat. In the event of a collision, these animals become projectiles and they're often ejected out of the vehicle. This is a hazard to the people in the car, and too many times these animals have been seriously hurt or killed as a result of striking something or someone, or if they are in fact ejected. As we know, these little animals, even in somewhat minor collisions, the animals sometimes suffer serious or fatal injuries just as a result of banging around the car. So we need to educate people of what these activities are, what is distracting, because as anybody with a small dog knows, if you take them in the car and they are not restrained, the first place they want to sit is on your lap, and how are they going to look out the window if they don't rest their chin on your arm, such as shown in this picture? So what can we do about this? Well, as most of you are familiar, this is a spotting scope. As the police, we've been trying to get creative in our pursuit of stopping the drivers who are distracted. Ultimately, what we are trying to do is we want to bring the behavior to the driver's attention and hopefully provide a fine that deters them from repeating the behavior in the future. This is the spotting scope that's currently being used right now. The scope itself is a regular scope. It is something that would be used by a bird watcher or any type of nature enthusiast. But what is different about it is the camera attachment. This camera attachment allows the police to set up to 1.2 kilometers away and allows us to detect distracted drivers who are using their phone or distracted in some other way. And we can take a picture. So in essence, we're catching the person in the act of being on their telephone. How this would work is there would be 2 officers or more. The first officer would be operating the scope, as you can see in this picture. They would spot the offender, they would take a picture of the offense, and then they would radio to a second officer or team of officers down the road to conduct the vehicle stop. With this scope, the picture has to be digitally downloaded, so that would happen back at the office and wouldn't be immediately available to the person on the roadside. And as I said, these scopes are currently in use now across BC. Our new technology, we're currently in the process of a pilot project where members are trying out a Bluetooth version of the spotting scope. So these Bluetooth enabled scopes, one pictured here down on the bottom is by Lasertech. It's the latest tool in police in technology, and it's aimed at distracted driver reduction. Right now in our pilot project, we've got officers testing this equipment, and what they're doing is they want to make sure that it's going to work in varying weather conditions as well as in various traffic conditions. Make sure that it's a useful tool that officers can use and find effective on the road. These scopes capture an image, and then that image can be instantly shared via Bluetooth with all other officers in the area. So, in essence, same as in our first scenario with the officer observing the offense and the second officer conducting the traffic stop, except in this case, the second officer who's conducted the stop can immediately show the violator a picture of them using the phone or whatever else the distraction is. We find that we're hoping that this will be helpful in that it'll eliminate the you're being stopped for being on your cell phone and no, I wasn't on my phone. However, these scopes are great, but these only work on drivers that are using their phone up and in the open. When we have the lap gazers, as we call them, when people are down here using their phones, we have to be a little bit more creative in what we're doing and how we're spotting these violators. So some examples of what we're doing in BC. This here is a picture of our Integrated Road Safety Unit, or IRSU. So as the change in the legislation led to higher fines, and the fines have become somewhat of a deterrent, but in the negative, it's also increased a driver's covert use of their cell phone. So in the past, instead of people driving down the road talking on their phone, now we have this. At every light, if you look around you, you're probably going to be very familiar with everybody that is sitting around you in their cars is looking down. So as police, we had to think of ways of we have to see what they're looking at. In this instance, our IRSU unit had one of the constables dressed up like a surveyor. As a surveyor in this reflective jacket, this officer was able to walk right up to vehicles and able to see inside. Again, this would be a team effort. This officer would observe the offense, radio ahead, and then the second team of police officer or officers would conduct the traffic stop. The only thing with cases like this is anytime you have an operation where you're using more than one officer, should the ticket be disputed, you're going to have both officers appear in court. These kind of ops are very popular. We also have used police officers on pedal bikes. Our motorcycle enforcement unit is very good at this because they can actually get right up beside a vehicle and look inside the vehicle. This is another example of one of those operatives. We had our RCMP member, Sergeant Lecker there, is dressed in bright yellow, so he's very, very visible. This particular op happened during morning rush hour traffic, and even in bright yellow, with him standing on the side of the road, and of course we've had tons of education about when construction workers are on the road, you want to be vigilant. This officer was still able to walk right up to vehicles and observe people in their vehicle. Morning rush hour traffic. He saw people shaving, he had people doing their hair, doing their makeup. It's not, even with members standing out there, we're still seeing a high number of tickets. So are people getting the message? Unfortunately, we're still seeing this activity take place. As recently as May the 23rd, one of my traffic units up in Kamloops in the central interior conducted an op such as this one. In a period of 3 hours on a nice sunny afternoon, they gave away 10 tickets for usage of electronic device. That same unit wasn't satisfied that they'd gotten enough distracted drivers off the road that day. So on the 30th of May, that same unit went out again. This time they set up for 6 hours. In 6 hours, they wrote 74 tickets. 26 of those tickets were specifically for cell phone usage. It's a pretty good day that day for the police, as they also got one drunk driver off the road. So basically, the message is, the police are there, we're out there continuing our efforts to get the message across of leave the phone alone. But, of course, there are challenges with that. So some of the difficulties we're seeing in policing and tracking the distracted drivers, actually witnessing the device in the hand of the driver. So as I said before, when people are up here talking on their phone, texting out in the open, this is what the evidence that the judicial justices of the peace want to hear. They want me to be able to say, on this time, at this date, I saw so-and-so with their right hand, with a cell phone in their right hand, it was up to their right ear, and they appeared to be talking on it. This is the evidence that we have to produce in court to get a guilty verdict. Of course, when somebody's got the phone in their lap, it makes it that much more difficult. The accumulating stats for distracted driving, that's not caused by electronic devices. So again, those due care and consideration tickets, a lot of the time, they can form part of distracted driving, as we saw with the eating or the reading or the shaving or whatever else people are doing behind the wheel. However, that ticket is also something that we would give to somebody who may be driving at an excessive speed and cutting in and out of traffic, or cutting in and out of traffic in poor weather. So there's a lot of different circumstances that can result in that same ticket that may not be distracted driving. It may be more appropriate to be under the aggressive driving. Resources. Resources are always going to be an issue. The bottom line is we don't have, and we will never have, a one-to-one ratio of police officer to possible offender. So we don't have eyes on every single person every time they're on the road to make sure that that person stays undistracted. So the ability to stop offenders in a safe location in a timely manner. That is a problem for us, especially in rush hour traffic. For example, if I am policing on a busy highway that's a commuter route in rush hour traffic and I see somebody on their cell phone, my option is to pull them over, in which case I will contribute to the traffic congestion because I will inevitably block a lane, because anytime there's a police action on the side of the highway, people will stop to look, even if they can have a clear path to get by. So that's generally not something that we want to do, adding more aggravation to an already congested area. My other option is, okay, I can follow them till they exit the highway. Well, that's great if they exit in the next exit or so, but sometimes, if you're following somebody for 20 minutes and then they finally exit the highway to a place that you can stop them, the timeliness isn't there, and as well, your officer now has spent 45 minutes on one violator. It's not always the best case scenario to stop people, even if we do catch them. But let's say we are able to stop somebody and we issue them an electronic device ticket. Then we go on to The high fines tend to cause suspected violators to fight their ticket in court. $368 is a significant amount of money, and they're going to pay that in addition to 4 penalty points. Right now, BC does not have a minimum fine for distracted driving, which means that the court can lower that fine to whatever they deem fit. It makes the disputing the ticket aspect very, very favorable for the offender, because if they go to court and they have a trial, maybe they'll be found not guilty and not have to pay anything at all. But even if they do get found guilty, the chances of having a fine reduction are significant. Sometimes what we're seeing specifically in BC and in the Lower Mainland is the reluctance of the courts to impose full fine amounts, even on guilty verdicts. Of course, as soon as you start lowering the fines, it diminishes the impact of the deterrent of the fine. We also are seeing a large inconsistency across the bench, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and even from JJP to JJP in sitting jurisdictions. Using phones behind the wheel is accepted by the mainstream public. Everybody does it. It's not something that's done by the criminals. Because this is such a widely accepted behavior, and it's common among all age groups, it seems. It's not more males, more females. Everybody is using their phone, that it's not perceived as the same. There's no stigma attached to, I got a cell phone ticket, big deal. It's not like you're shunned at work or anything like that. It's unfortunately being somewhat accepted. It is what it is. People are using their phones. And as of late, there seems to be a little bit more action on our Twitter page, Facebook page, the vocal minority, I like to call them. And what these people generally will respond to in any kind of messaging we put out there is that they feel that the police are unfairly targeting drivers who use their phones stopped at stoplights. Obviously, this contradicts our message that the police are trying to send, that being on your cell phone distracted behind the wheel is dangerous. It doesn't matter if you're stopped at a light or a stop sign. Like my first example in the slides on the beginning, you're distracted, you're looking down at your lap, the light goes green, a quick response is that acceleration through the intersection, and unfortunately, possibly into a person. So for our part, in addition to the enforcement, what we're trying to do is educate the public. One of the best links that we have to the general public is our social media. Obviously, with everybody being on their cell phone, they're on social media platforms. These two are two examples of recent messages that I've sent out on Twitter and Facebook. Our provincial traffic unit has its own Twitter account. We have both an English and French identical Twitter account, as well as we have access to the BC RCMP Facebook page. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the message out in simple form to be understood by everybody. The first slide has got a woman wearing 2 earbuds with a big X, and that same woman wearing 1 earbud with a check mark. The message there is 2 earbuds, not okay, 1 earbud is okay. If you use 2 earbuds in BC, you can get a ticket for using an electronic device. In the second picture, we were fortunate enough to have access to the specially made RCMP Lego men. This Lego officer here is issuing a ticket to somebody who's got a very large cell phone in their hand. We actually used this picture in our tweets to announce the cell phone ticket penalties that were just increased as of March 1st of this year. So all in all, we're hopeful that with continued education and reaching out to the public like we have with these slides, along with our enforcement aspects, that we will be able to get that message out to the public, lessen the harm that distracted driving is having on our roadways, and ultimately reduce that number from 78 fatalities a year to 0. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, this is me. Thank you.
I would like to ask to keep your question for the end. Et je vais demander à Monsieur.
Now I'm going to ask Mr. Gakuba to give his presentation now. In the meantime, I'll introduce myself. I'm Charles Gakuba, and I'm captain in Montreal West, Laval and Laurentide Road Control. So I have a large control area. So Melissa was talking earlier about what's being done in British Columbia, and I find that the laws there are quite strict. So at the same time, here in Quebec, in our roadside control, we mainly deal with heavy trucks and buses. So my presentation is going to focus on the operations that we've done regarding distracted driving on heavy vehicles and buses. So it's a separate mandate. So distracted driving, a few important facts. There's cell phone use while driving, which reduces driving performance, and at the same time, it also affects and in fact increases the risk of collision. And cell phone use while driving has an impact on performance and on driving habits, and it increases the risk of an accident by a factor of 4. Distraction is a major factor, and it's underestimated. That's an important factor. And our results for road accidents, because we're part of the SAAQ, so year after year, the results are about 30% of drivers and passengers of cars that are killed in a collision were not wearing their safety belt. And the overall analysis of road accidents has identified the main causes of accidents involving heavy vehicles, both regarding the drivers, if we want to talk about fatigue and distraction, and also excessive speed. We're also talking about vehicle safety. So an impact is the condition of brakes, wheels, tires, and also overloaded vehicles. The analysis of the probable causes of accidents. An analysis of likely causes of accidents. Our report was completed by our partners, and also when I talk about partners, I'm talking about the trucking industry and also the Quebec Transportation Department, and also our police forces, the SQ, the Sûreté du Québec, and the municipal police services. Only 38% of victims who died in heavy vehicles were wearing their seat belts. Distraction and inattention are the leading causes of accidents involving heavy vehicles. If we look at the number of accidents, if we look at inattention, we see that it comes at the top of the list. And driving at a reckless speed and other causes, driving at a reckless speed, tailgating, and other negligent behavior, did not yield, other distractions, changed lanes, or drove on the wrong side or drifted onto the wrong side of the road, and also people who ran a red light. Our organizational priorities when it comes to road control in the SAAQ, we were given a mandate to bring down the numbers of deaths caused by road accidents, and we participated in national forums with police services to reduce the number of road accidents. So the aspects that we're working on are driver behavior. Here we're talking about hours of driving and fatigue. We're also talking about roadside checks or circular inspections, seat belts, and adaptation of driving. For example, in winter, one drives differently from in summer. And there's also vehicle safety. And the aspects that have to do with vehicle safety involve brakes, wheels and tires, also stowage. And we're also talking about brakes and turn signal lights. There are also other road users that we take into account when on the road. One is not alone. There are also pedestrians, cyclists, motorcycles, and also passenger vehicles. So we have to keep our distance, and we always have to be cautious about other road users when turning right. We have to make sure that we do not cut off drivers and also avoid blind spots. You know that we have a lot of accidents that are caused, particularly in the Montreal region, when there's snow removal operations. There are a lot of accidents caused, and Montreal has a project together with the Department of Transportation, and they're looking at various approaches by which to solve this issue. So, road check operations, we have a two-pronged approach. We have to deal with road checks and monitoring, and at the same time, we have to do prevention and awareness building. When it comes to road checks and monitoring, we place emphasis on distracted driving. And we also look at people who are using particularly cell phones and who are texting, as well as driver fatigue, and also those who are not wearing seat belts. As regards the prevention and awareness side, we're doing a lot of campaigns on the blind spot, and at the SAAQ, we've also brought out advertising on TV that's repeated frequently. You can see it on the main channels in Quebec. And its slogan is, "You're no match for a heavyweight," and it shows a large truck that weighs 40,000 kilograms and a person who weighs 80 kilograms. So you're not a match for a heavy vehicle. We also have distracted driving, cell phone use and texting, driver fatigue, and also seat belts. So it's almost the same areas. This is why we have instigated an operation that we call driver behavior. This involves an operation that is carried out with an unmarked bus with tinted windows that places us in a higher position. Earlier I heard my counterpart from BC, from the RCMP. They have different means, and perhaps we could use those means. But for us, the position in a large vehicle, when one is in a normal patrol sedan, it's impossible to see if someone is texting while driving. So that's why we brought in an operation where we use an unmarked bus, and we've contacted our partners from the SQ, the Quebec Police, Provincial Police, to work with us. And they go along some of the main roads in Montreal and even here in Quebec City, the highways like the Highway 40 and Highway 20, and you'll see a video where they did the same operation in Quebec, and it was a strong success. So you can be higher up, and so we have a clear view of the driver behavior in all types of vehicles. Earlier he talked about people who are texting, and we're not texting like this. They're texting on their lap. So when you're higher up, you can see right down. And later on, you'll be able to see this in the video. The joint operation with Sûreté du Québec targets all road users. So we do not have a mandate to intercept passenger cars. So our partners from the police intercept the passenger cars, and we deal with our mandate, which is the heavy vehicles. So together with this mission, we are assisted. For example, we're dealing in this way with both kinds, passenger vehicles and heavy vehicles. We want to reduce the consequences of distracted driving by addressing drivers of all ages and in all types of vehicles. So here you can see this advertisement, deux doigts de la mort, a finger's breadth from being killed. So you can see this sign on the road. It's been used for a couple of years. So this is a campaign to maximize the effectiveness of interventions on driver behavior, because it can intervene on other factors that can result in serious injuries or death, such as not wearing seatbelts or other sources of distracted driving. Earlier we saw a wide range of things, with people eating, with people putting on makeup or reading. All of these things are things that we see. Now, we can take a look at the video clip taken from an operation that we carried out. There's a white truck, a 10-wheeler, texting with his left hand. I'm not on this bus to be a tourist or just for recreation. No, I'm accompanying some SQ road check professionals for a concerted anti-texting operation. We use the height of this vehicle to surprise drivers who are holding their cell phones. We see those that are doing it through a different type of operation. It's a unique operation that is added to other things that are already being done in order to get people to change their delinquent behavior. This is really in collaboration with the SAAQ and the road check officials. So you can see people not only talking on the cell phone, but also texting, and they have their cell phone on their lap, which is harder to see when you're in a patrol car. Here we have a good point of observation. We're really right beside the vehicles, and in heavy vehicles you can see, first of all, if they're wearing their seatbelt properly, or quite simply if they are using a cell phone. We expected to see a lot of them, but not as many as we did see. This operation is called responsible driving, which is added to our texting while driving means you don't care about the consequences. For more information, consult the website of the SAAQ. So that was an example of an operation that we carried out, and it's been underway for a year now. But the example that I took for the video, we were criticized for a number of things. I don't know if you saw that, if you were watching attentively. When we prepared our text, we didn't want to take this out, actually. So you may have seen our officers who are standing in the bus. So it's not a very good example to follow. So when we present this, it's to show you that we've rectified things. So we're learning too. So it's a fact. Now when we do operations, we make sure that the people are sitting. So that's just a little tip of the hat. So a few observations that we did during these operations. Heavy vehicle drivers get more tickets for not wearing their seatbelts than for cell phone use. Whereas passenger vehicle drivers get more tickets for cell phone use at the wheel than for not wearing their seatbelts. So, as you can observe, heavy vehicles have drivers that are respecting the regulations as a general rule because they have a CB and they don't, their cell phone. I mean, they have a CB, so they don't need to use their cell phone. So we have more of a problem with cell phones. So we can deal with that at the same time. And the impact of operations. So far, we have not observed any change in driver behavior. When we hand out as many tickets as we did in 2016, in fact, it's been going up. So, in conclusion, these operations have increased drivers' fear of being caught, which may influence them to drive more safely. According to these observations and the significant level of distracted drivers, we must continue our efforts to combat the problem of distracted driving, one of the main causes of accidents with injuries, in order to improve road safety. Thank you very much. Thank you all. I hope you didn't have any trouble with my second Lac Saint Jean accent. We have a bit of time now for questions. If you have any questions in the room for one or the other of the presenters.
Or comments? Could you use just make sure that you use the microphone?
Conrad Liliev, National Association of Automobile Clubs of Canada. One question for Melissa. How does the BC government justify such a variance in fines and or points for different distracted driving? I think really that we should educate our politicians that it really needs to be the same, because I don't think there's that much of a difference as whether you've got a dog on your lap, whether you're talking on your cell phone, or whether you've got a hamburger in one hand and a cup of Tim Hortons coffee in the next one.
I agree with you, and I think part of that is the education piece of what exactly distracted driving looks like. Because we don't have a catch-all distracted driving ticket, we're trying to play catch-up, I guess you could say. We do have because again, up until June of 2016, the cell phone ticket was only $167. And when it became readily apparent that cell phone usage is really causing havoc on our roads, then the government addressed the issue, and that's why we see the higher fines. It's very possible that we may, that the higher fines for everything across the board will be the same. Because again, like I said, with the distracted dog, the ticket for that is drive while your view or control is obstructed. However, the officer still has the discretion, depending on what's going on there, that if they were a hazard on the road, they could give them the due care ticket, which of course carries the same fine as the cell phone. And actually the points are increased with 6 points instead of 4.
Bonjour, mon nom est Suzy.
My name is Suzy, and I'm with the Transport Canada Equipment Association. It's a comment. I wanted to congratulate you on your advertisements concerning the fact that you're no match for a heavy vehicle. I think it has a very positive impact, and the message gets across well. One is not always aware of the fact that because one thinks one is invincible and one thinks that people see us, is not always the case, and I think that you show this very well in your advertisement. That being said, yesterday I was coming from Montreal and I saw a young woman who was passing me on the highway. I must have been doing 114 according to my odometer, and she passed me on my left while eating with a fork. She had a dish and was eating with a fork, and I've met with a lot of police. I saw some police a little further on. I saw that she had been stopped by a police officer who gave her a ticket. So all of that shows that congratulations. I find that the advertising that you're doing is really having a positive impact and is also having an impact on our day-to-day activities, because we see the impact. Thank you. Thank you very much. At the same time, I would like to add another point regarding prevention. In our road checks with the SAAQ, with the police officers, we've started going out to the schools to do some prevention work, and particularly with elderly people. So as you know, as you say, we're no match. I was in another conference with the Department of Transportation. They were showing the dangers of blind spots. Sometimes people are not aware of that. A heavy vehicle doesn't see us. The driver doesn't see us. So we're working on that, and it's become really essential for our road checks and prevention. So just a brief announcement from the sponsor, because we didn't introduce this message, but it is available on the website, this advertisement, as Charles said, of the SAAQ, the website. So currently it's being run on all the TV channels here in Quebec, that advertisement. Are there any further questions? No? Very well then. I really found it interesting, the fact that we had complementary approaches, I would say, regarding the police road checks, And I find that there's a ground level, and then there's a higher view from the bus. And I think that you all have the same goals with these different methods of police checks. So thank you very much for your presentations, which were very interesting. And I have a little gift to present to you in a few moments. And I also have some announcements from the sponsor regarding the sponsors once again. So I would like to invite you all to go over to the not the networking session, but the welcoming reception, rather, which is going to take place next door, just down the hall in the exhibitors room very shortly. And please remember to return your interpretation headsets at the registration desk so that they can recharge the batteries for tomorrow. So thank you all for being here, and thanks to the presenters for their excellent presentations. Thank you and have a good evening.